Well, this is awkward. So, Marvel United. X-Men Marvel United. Should you back it? What do you need to know about it? Pros, cons, everything in between. Let's talk. Because it's making waves. It's making the cash. But like all of these games that are especially in the realm of heavy plastic and high expense, either or, what matters is it right for you? Now, I just put out my review of Marvel United. Check that out, because if you're not as familiar with it, or if you're looking at picking up stuff from the previous campaign during this campaign, I have my full thoughts there on what is worthwhile, what is more worthwhile, and maybe if you're not interested in getting everything, maybe what you can skip too. So, if that sounds good, check that out. Otherwise, let's talk X-Men. X-Men, X-Men, X-Men. I am a huge X-Men fan. Disclaimer. You know, I was the kid that had X-Men trading cards growing up, right? I collected them just as much as I collected the other trading cards. I'm gonna battle you, I'm gonna battle you. Anyway, so what about X-Men has been so endearing? I don't know. But the question on the mind, with what CMON did for Marvel United, with the Marvel IP and the Avengers IP, essentially. This is Marvel United Avengers. Now you have Marvel United X-Men. How much of the lore, how much of the mythos, how much of the comic books, because that's really what we're talking about here, were they going to dive into and give us? Because they definitely went with some of the more unexpected and the lesser known, not unknown, but lesser known heroes and villains within the MU. And I say that as a very positive. And, full disclaimer, they're doing the same thing now on X-Men, which I will say I give them a lot of credit for. It would have been really easy to just stay very, very mainstream with this campaign, with mutants, good guys, bad guys, whatever, that everyone was familiar with. The eye-catching, eye-grabbing ones. But as we're seeing it unfold, there's a lot of other stuff coming out too, and that is very good from that standpoint. But I digress. Let's actually talk about that campaign, not my fanboyism. So let's take a look. So here we go. Marvel United X-Men. First off, I mean, it's millions and millions. It's going to surpass the previous campaign. And why is that? As I stated in my review, because this game, people judged the first one on appearances. They said, I'm going to have these little chibis, and the gameplays look super light, and I'm not going to be interested. Well, I'll have you know, playing with my kids, now this is my kids, we're about 50% win-loss. It is what it is. The difficulty can easily be ramped up or ramped down depending on what you want to do. But again, I digress. What do you need to know about this campaign? The interesting thing about this campaign, and I will give them kudos, but also with a word of warning, because they have been offering the vast majority of the content from the previous Kickstarter. Which, if you're familiar with CMON's history of their 48 previous campaigns, that is highly, highly, highly unusual. And here is the speculation part. Skip over this for a minute or two if this is no interest to you. There have been reports over the last year or so of their financial solvency, of the profit loss margin, and some of the ongoings as it became a private company to a public company overseas. And with that came more scrutiny, especially from interested parties within the community. And I cannot mention this without wondering if these two things are somewhat related, because all of a sudden we are seeing a huge plethora of their content, the previously almost unavailable Kickstarter content, show up in waves on Miniature Market. Again, stuff that was only available through that one random odd pledge manager time machine campaign that they did previously. Again, just speculating. Like, are the two related? Is it just coincidence? I don't know. Anyway, back to this campaign. This campaign has everything that you would think of as a normal CMON campaign, right? The pseudo stretch goals, slowly getting spaced out, slowly having the expansions paced on a regular basis to encourage increased pledging to raise the amount that is funded. And just like I have given other campaigns kudos for, I am going to mention this as a negative, that other campaigns, Primal, Monster Hunter, say what you want about them. They went, here we go, guys. Here is your all-in. CMON, again, for some reason, feels the need to hold it in until the end. Now, this is a great case study, too, because Monster Hunter is literally running up against it almost in the same time frame, but shorter. And they are raising more money right now without having to slowly reveal all these pseudo-fake stretch goals, as well as extra expansions or extra add-ons or extra whatever. I wonder if that's going to have any influence going forward. Now, I doubt it. Someone on one of the various social media sites literally looked at the order and the timing days-wise of how these expansions and add-ons and playmats were released, and the first 3 or 4 along that time trajectory were exactly the same as this campaign as the previous Marvel United campaign. So, I mean, I guess I get, well, it's our tried and true method, look what it gets us. At the same time, you're being outdone by someone who said, you know what, guys, our all-in is almost $300, here you go, from the get-go. Here's all of our exclusive stuff. This is exclusive, this isn't. I think we're finally seeing a little bit of an evolution of that, and is it starting to hurt CMON? Anyway, again, side note. So let's talk about the game itself, because I'm rambling here. 1 to 5 player, 14 plus, 40 minutes or so, depending on who you're playing with, depending on how you're playing. 2 pledge levels right now. The $65 mutant pledge level, which gets you the exclusives with the core and all the stretch goals. And then the Apocalypse pledge, which gets you all of that, an extra exclusive, and the Horsemen of the Apocalypse expansion. We'll talk about the value a little later. What do you need to know about this? This is a very quick, light-ish game with a pandemic, stomping out fires, solving strategy, rescuing civilians, beating up thugs, completing threats, while then unlocking objectives to be able to actually do damage or fight the villain in the game in the first place. So what is this offering new? Because this game was not perfect by any means, as I said in my review. There are legitimate criticisms. The scaling can be an issue. The amount of what you're getting in some of these is highly variable. And with some of these expansions, the challenges or the modes feel more tacked on in some than others. Some of the locations do not feel terribly different. The characters themselves sometimes do not feel terribly different. The villains on a pro side of things feel very different in how you play them. It's the same general 3 things you're worrying about: overflow, bam, and then how they're moving around, but their threats are all different, and how they interact with you is all different. But the characters themselves, too many of the MU Avengers United characters, I prefer calling them that now that I've come up with that term, too many of them are too simple, too much overlap, and part of that goes to the fact that you only have these 3 symbols that you're using, essentially, plus the wild. And that's okay, because like I mentioned, it adds to the simplicity. When you have a deck of 12 cards, there's only so many combinations of those 3, essentially, because they don't mix the wild in with too much, that you can have. And there is too few of the special power ones. Now, again, more from a balance issue, probably. But, again, that was one of the criticisms that they're changing in this game, is that you are starting with at least some of those special worded powers in your hand, which, again, is addressing one of the major issues with the first one in the first place. They are also adding, as you can see here, obviously some exclusives, but what more importantly, these purple ones. Blue, heroes, red, villains, purple, they're calling anti-heroes, where you can play them as villains, but you can also play them as heroes, which again makes you able to play some of your favorite characters, which is great. Wouldn't it be awesome if you can play Red Skull? Now, I don't know. I'm releasing this a little bit before the end of the campaign. Now, it wouldn't shock me if we saw a crossover, sort of like they did in Arcadia Quest, crossing over some of the guys from Masmora into Arcadia Quest, and vice versa. Do I expect it? No. But is it on my radar at least? Yeah. So, you're getting all of the stretch goals. Let me be clear. If you're thinking at all of pledging this, you should get it now. The stretch goal box from the previous Avengers U campaign, 33 heroes, 11 bad guys, 44 in total. When you scroll through all of the total of these other expansions and core and everything else, the non-exclusives box was less, all of them added together, including the core even. So that one stretch goal box versus everything else was less total miniatures. That's insane. That is an insane value, and you have to expect that this stretch goal box is going to be the same. So if you have any inkling of this, you back. Also, the Thanos expansion is one of the 2 expansions above all else that I recommend from the previous campaign. And so, value-wise, I'm guessing that the Apocalypse is going to be somewhat similar, since we're talking about value now, all of a sudden. So the $100 pledge, and I say the Apocalypse pledge as a good value, not because I'm necessarily saying it's worth $35, but because if you want more game, let me be clear, if you want a better game than a family light kids game, the Thanos expansion, the Infinity Gauntlet expansion, takes it to another level. That is freaking hard, even at the normal levels of things. Playing solo, I got to the end and Thanos whooped me. Skunked me, right? I am guessing that the Apocalypse expansion with the Horsemen of the Apocalypse are going to be very akin to that. So, without a doubt, you do the $100 pledge level. Now, again, I'm putting this out before the end of the campaign, so we don't know, at the time of me filming this, everything that's going to be on there. But the all-in pledge, the ultimate pledge here, $190 for everything minus the playmat and the cardboard locations. I have to believe that they're going to do something similar, because this is the way CMON works. As I said earlier, in the head of the exclusivity side of things, right? They pledge locked Yondu at the lower one and Adam Warlock at the higher. And it worked, right? A lot of people got the all-in, but do you really need one more hero? No, absolutely not. Am I going to get it as a completionist? Probably. The question is going to be, if this is $190, $100 more than the Infinity Pledge, and you got 5 extra expansions, so $20 each essentially, is it going to be something similar in this campaign, where you're going to be looking at 200? Honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if they went inflation and you were talking 220. Liege Nostradamus, you can call me. But that is what I would expect. I would expect no less than 200, if not closer to 220 before shipping at this point. We'll see if I'm right. Now, let's talk about these stretch goals. I know a lot of people also complain, I don't know who these guys are, they're not interesting to me. Again, I expect it to be sort of a similar diversity of heroes and villains, although with a few anti-heroes in here, of the original one. Which, again, I think they're doing an awesome job of. I talked about this at the beginning, right? How deep were they going to dive into the annals and the mythology? Deathbird, Callisto, Shadow King, Arcade even? You know, you're getting some fan favorites too. X-Force. Not the X-Force I wanted, I'll be honest with you. I wanted the newer version of X-Force, so they are definitely going with the older set of comics. Now, I guess that makes me wonder if 1 or 2 of these last expansions are going to be newer, but you could be talking a whole nother X-Men United campaign down the line with some of the newer stuff. The X-Force Deadpool. that sort of thing. Now, the one thing that I wonder about in that sense is you did have Phantom X here, which is one of the newer X-Force members. So will you see that? Other side note here. How many versions of Wolverine do you think we're going to get? The over-under is 4, just so you know, for betting purposes. You can let me know in the comment section below. Okay, back to topic. But these are, these are great characters. And you're getting the exclusives. I don't care. The blue team, the yellow team, like I said, these are digging deep. So my biggest question so far on the optional buys has been this blue versus gold. But after reading it through, it definitely made me go, I don't know. I mean, Arcadia Quest-ish vibes, but still going against, PvE as well as PvP. That's tricky. That's a tricky balance. I'm not sure if I like that. Coincidentally enough, this video that was put out on that update with Quackalope and Jeremy Howard and a couple other people, I was actually supposed to play with them on that date. But Jeremy, texted me and he's like, hey, do you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, Thursday morning, 11 a.m. I'm like, who does a filming at Thursday morning at 11 a.m. during the week? Oh, so I missed out. Otherwise, you would have had a chance to see me actually play. But he stood by this and said, I saw it online, his comment on it, Twitter, that he loved it. And I trust his judgment as someone else who really likes this game right now. So that has convinced me, as long with what the mechanics of Sinister and Sebastian Shaw are doing differently. Again, because the villain stuff is really strong from the last game as well as this one. And I'm impressed. And plus, if I'm going to get the other stuff, which really looks interesting to me, value-wise, it doesn't make sense to not get it from a resale value or from a actual cash side of things. Then you've got First Class, the extra Wolverine, the extra Cyclops, all your regular guys. Again, hopefully, as one of my biggest criticisms of the first one, that you are making these guys different. There are just some characters in the expansion boxes as well as the exclusive box that I just go, meh, I would be happy never to play with you again, Spider-Ham. I'm sorry. A couple of those are clearly a little bit lacking. And I just fear that some may be that for this case as well, given the plethora. Phoenix 5, amazing. Super interested in that one. Playmat is the only other thing that I wonder about. I know that they're probably going to do a cardboard one as well, cardboard locations. I regretted not getting those cardboard locations. My wife has a laminator. I'm going to laminate those locations. It's going to be better. It's going to save me money. Boom, there you go. Playmat as well. Playmat looks great. People have been clamoring for it. The X-Men side of things looks great. But when I'm playing it right now, 95% of my plays have been with all of us sitting on the same side of the table. And I think with sitting around the table, this makes sense. But since I'm not doing that, and then I'm trying to read these locations and these effects and these threats upside down, and it makes it so much harder. I am actually happy that I passed on the playmat, and I will probably pass on the playmat again this time around, unless it's included as a special bundle. There you go. All the optional buys that I mentioned, cardboard locations, Return of Sinister Six, Infinity Gauntlet, Rise, Black Panther, Tales of Asgard, Guardians of the Galaxy, Enter the Spider-Verse. Now, it's funny because of the expansions, this is probably how I would tier them. These two are by far and away the best expansions, period. These are probably the next best. These are probably at the bottom, in my opinion. What else do you need to know? I'm not going to give you gameplay basics. It's basic. It's straightforward. Here is the other evolution, though. It allows you to do a 1v all, which I don't know how I feel about, but if you're going to add it and you're going to allow it, great. Great. Icing on the top of the cake for me. I have no issue with it. Am I going to use it? Who knows? I've played it enough, so I probably will, but if you're going to put it there, great. Villains are going to have extra surprises, even better. Taking the complexity just that slight notch up to get all those people that were saying it's too easy, it's too simple as a negative term. Simple is great in board games in general. I don't know why people use that as a derogatory term. You can have simplicity be great. Simplicity, elegance. You don't need complexity to be great. People confuse the two often, and this, I think, is the case. Also, your heroes have a new ability as well to react to that. And like I said, some key effects are always starting in your hand, at least with 2 types or more. So you're never going to see a quote by me on a page like this, but I feel that strongly about this game. I love it. Here's all your stuff. Here's all your gameplay. Here's all your breakdowns. Again, with all of these stretch goals, tons of cool characters that I did not expect to see. Look, there's another Wolverine. Are you counting? Keeping track along with me? So, there you go. So overall, what do I think? I think if you are interested at all, this version looks more complete, an evolution, I dare say, of the first game without losing the simplicity, but adding complexity and adding more variability in the play without needing to add significant overhead. If you are looking at one or the other, my option is go with this one. Especially if you like the X-Men aesthetic, especially if you even want to be able to play the 1v-all. As you said, with some of those cards there at the end, the hero and the villain new edition cards, you could probably just take those completely out and play the version that is Marvel United Avengers right now. But you get this on Kickstarter. That is the one thing I will say about CMON. The value of that expansion exclusive pack that I talked about earlier is massive. More characters, miniatures than everything else from the first campaign, including the core and all the expansions combined. And I'm not sure the number is going to be quite the same with this one, but if it's not, it's going to be close. And they are clearly emphasizing, and this is another con that I mentioned, they are clearly putting more work into some of the expansions than others, at least evidenced by the first campaign. And so those are the ones you prioritize. The Sinister Six and the Infinity Gauntlet. Well, the Infinity Gauntlet equivalent is the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So that's a no-brainer. The question is, though, looking at these other expansions right now, which one is Return of Sinister Six? Right now, you'd probably say Blue and Gold, just because they're adding that other dynamic element of team play. But if you're going to get that right there, I mean, you can cut it off, but there will be an all-in bundle that's going to save you money, and you might as well get the rest because you could probably even sell the rest for some cash, given the fact that they are bundling exclusive characters into each one of them. You could probably even sell any other pledge-locked characters that they may throw in at the end if they do what they did during the first campaign and make some money that way. So what am I going to do? I'm all in. Now, I'm going to split it up. You will not see me pledging all in during the campaign. I will upgrade my pledge to all in during the pledge manager because I prefer to split it funds-wise that way. But that is my plan. And that is before even the last 1 or 2 expansions were announced. This is a hit for me. This is a hit for being able to play it with my 5, even, as well as my 7-year-old who requests it almost on a daily basis right now. This also scales well enough to be a lighter version of a pandemic-esque cooperative game where people can choose a hero of their choice. And now you can scale it up to 5 people and play 1 versus all or team versus team. The variability and the adaptability then cannot be underrated. And that is why this game will be staying in my collection, period, probably forever. Are all of the expansions going to stay in my collection? That's a tougher question to answer right now. But the rest of it? Yeah, absolutely. So don't be fooled, I guess is what I'm saying here at the end, by appearances with this game. It scales well, both in terms of players, as well as difficulty and play groups that you may want to play it in. That is not a common occurrence. And that is why it works so well for me. Because, that overlap that I can do that with in terms of games in my library is not massive, especially at the variable player count. And, honestly, final point here, it's easy to get to the table and it's fun. I can't beat that. So, overall, pros, I think the game is just going to be better. It's more solid. It's more well-rounded. You can play team versus team. You can play 1v all. You can play up to 5 players. Although I'm not sure I would play with more than 3. Is probably the best sweet spot, 4 being at the most, just because I think the difficulty scales up a little bit as you get higher player counts. Ultimately, I think the X-Men IP does more for me than the Avengers as a pro, and I think the additional powers that you're going to be starting with in your hand, as well as some of the other features as the anti-hero, definitely make this a more well-rounded product for a broader base. For someone looking for a little bit more complex than just what is given in the core and the previous Kickstarter campaign. Cons? At the core, the game is still the same. The simplistic, relativistically speaking nature of it is not drastically different. If you did not like the previous game, this is probably not going to change your opinion of it. Period. Also, if you don't like randomization and the fact that you cannot just have full mitigation because you're shuffling your deck and you may not get the cards you need, or the bad guy pulls a couple super awesome cards in a row that end up making you just SOL, there's not a whole lot sometimes you can do about that. Period. The other risk, as was previously said, this is a CMON product. You are getting a plethora. As I mentioned in my review of the first Kickstarter, there is a risk that some of these characters are just going to be underdeveloped or half-baked, not fully utilizing or taking in the full potential, sort of like a couple of the expansions I felt like from the first Kickstarter. That is the risk that you're getting with the discounted price of the all-in. The other downside is, if you want to get in for that huge value from the first Kickstarter, the stretch goal expansion box, it is content locked behind the all-in from the previous pledge. And so you're going to have to get the whole shebang in order to get it in the first place, which is going to leave a bad taste in other people's mouths. And I understand that. Now, the plus is, obviously, it can play anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes. So setting up and playing again even 2, maybe even 3 times in the hour, depending on how fast you play, is completely feasible. But if that's not what you're looking for, again, this is not going to be for you. If you are looking for something that the variability is like Aeon's End or Spirit Island, in the sense that those characters are uniquely, distinctly, completely separate, and there's not overlap between the powers, this is also not going to be for you. Because, like I said, the overlap with only having 3-ish, 4 symbols is just going to be there regardless. There you go. Marvel United, X-Men. Those are my thoughts. What do you think? Is it right for you, though? Because plenty of you will go out there and say, this one isn't right for me because of the things you just said. I don't want another cooperative game. I don't want something lighter-ish. And you know what? That's completely okay. But the value, plastic aside for a minute, is there gameplay-wise with the amount of variability. Not only that was there in the first place, but now that they are adding more and giving it more legs to stand on with the second iteration, the second evolution of it, if you will, I think it's going to be even better. So, there you go. Clearly not for everybody, but for me, at least, it is. So, let me know how you feel. Let me know what you're doing. Hope this was helpful. As always, if you liked it, check me out. Throw me a sub. And hopefully I'll see you around. Stay classy out there.